In this video, we're going to talk about 10 tips for surviving a fraud marriage interview. Stay tuned. Hi everybody, my name is Sapochnick and I'm an immigration attorney based in San Diego, California. We get a lot of questions. People are getting summoned to second interviews after filing their marriage petitions. And so I've decided to do this video to kind of explain some things to make the process a little bit easier for couples that are going through this process, what to do and how to prepare. So here are 10 tips that can help you survive a Stokes interview, a second interview. Number one is be honest with yourself, with your partner, and with your lawyer. It's very important that anything that happens, you have to be honest about the process. You know, whether you don't have enough documents or whatever it is, be honest before that interview, because once you get in there, it's very difficult to change anything. So it's important to be honest with yourself, with your spouse, and with your lawyer. Tip number 2, make sure that you prepare all the documents the week before the interview, so you can go back and forth with your attorney, with your spouse, to understand what's in the case. Sometimes you have to show them bona fides of your marriage, documents, joint bills, accounts, pictures, things like that. Make sure you prepare everything in advance so you feel comfortable with the documents. When they ask you to show them, you are able to find them very easily in the pile instead of fumbling for everything and losing track. Very important to be prepared at least a week before the interview. Make sure you have everything ready. Tip number 3, never ever try to lie or invent information at that interview. It's better to be honest and say, I don't remember, than inventing things, because it's worse to say that they'll say that you lied to them or charge you with misrepresentation than just say, listen, officer, I really don't remember, and I just can't answer this question, I just don't remember it. So it's very important to be honest and just say you don't remember instead of inventing facts. Tip number 5, make sure that when you enter the interview, you are comfortable and facing the officer, looking them in the eyes instead of looking at the ground or looking away. Look at the officer, be comfortable, and let them finish the questions before you answer. Many cases, I was present at interviews where clients were answering information that was not even asked. Things that they thought the officer asked, which makes things look odd. Listen to the question of the officer and only then answer. It's very important because they also want to make sure that you understand. And if you don't understand, really ask them to repeat the question. Tip number 6, it's very important that at the time of the interview, you are familiar with the situation around you. You understand that you are here at an interview. This is not a chatty conversation. You are there. It's a government procedure. So you are there to tell the truth, to be honest, and you are there also to convince the government that this is a real marriage. So when you go there, you behave in a way that is natural. So don't over-touch your spouse. Don't over-pretend that you are in a loving relationship. Behave like you behave in any normal setting. It's very important because the officer will pick on that. If you want, I had cases where couples walk in there, and in my office they are so cold and quiet, and it's their nature, it's their culture. But at the interview they try to be over affectionate. There's no need for that because the officers will pick on that energy. Have the same energy you have at home at the interview. It's an official interview, so act and give that respect to that interview. Tip number 8, remember that you have rights as well. Sometimes the immigration officer may be harsh. Sometimes they feel that something is going on, and sometimes they're trying to do their job, so they're trying to find fake marriages, and sometimes they're not always right. There are cases where they'll try to they separate you and they'll try to put some pressure on the U.S. citizen spouse. They may say, read the I-130 form loud. You sign here. We don't think it's a real marriage. You need to withdraw this case. If this is a real marriage and you are there and you're trying to fight your rights to get this case approved, intimidation by the government, you don't have to fall under that pressure. If they try to intimidate you, sign something, and you don't feel that comfortable, you can always say, officer, I want to talk to my attorney. I don't want to sign this. This is your right. So remember, if you know you're right and they try to put pressure on you, you do not have to sign anything, and you have the right to stop the interview at any time and speak with your attorney. Tip number 9, always and always be courteous and polite to the government. Whether it's the officer they interviewed, the supervisor, communication afterwards, any request for evidence, make sure that you maintain professional courtesy and polite, because the worst thing can happen to you is that you're in an interview and you treat the officer with bad faith and disrespect. Then most likelihood is that they're not going to be there on your side, and they're going to be more inclined to not be helpful. So always be respectful to the government officers at the interview or anywhere else out there. And tip number 10, remember, in fraud interviews, the purpose of the government is to determine whether the marriage is real or not. So there are structures for those interviews, and in many ways they follow a similar format. They want to understand what you're doing at the day of the interview. They will ask you questions about maybe the weekend before. They may ask you questions about how you met, and they're going to repeat those questions several times throughout the interview to see if you're confused or whatever. So it's important to be aware that it's a particular format for this fraud interview, that you have to be aware that it's not just a chitty-chatty conversation. They'll be asking you certain things about the day before, the weekend before, a full day description of what you've done, both sides, and they'll separate you and they're going to write it down. So it's very important, again, to be mindful of what kind of interview it is. Be prepared, and always remember, you can always stop the interview if things don't go well and consult your attorney. I hope those tips were helpful, and if you have any questions, please post them in the comments below, and we'll do more of those based on your questions and your concerns. My email is jacob@h1b.biz. You can email me as well with your questions, and I look forward to seeing you at our next video. Thanks for watching.